welcome back to the 2015 South Carolina AgriBiz and Farm Expo. This afternoon we're speaking with Dr. Boyd Parr, and he is the director of Clemson University Livestock Poultry Health and also the state veterinarian.
That's correct.
That is a big mouthful. So I'm going to ask you, what does that encompass?
Well, for those that are in animal agriculture, every state has a state animal health authority, which is traditionally called the state veterinarian. And so I have that role in South Carolina. It's natural to me because I grew up in South Carolina, and Clemson has been doing this since 1901 in South Carolina. So I think our pesticides regulation even precedes that, starts in the late 1800s. But it is unique. We happen to be the only state in the nation that has the state veterinarian under a land-grant institution. A lot of different options. About 11 or 12 states have their whole separate state agency that is the state animal health authority.
Okay.
And then a significant number, 30-something, are under state departments of agriculture.
I see. Okay.
But in our case, we've always done it that way, so it seems natural. And
it does make sense.
Well, for South Carolina, really, I think it's the most efficient method of delivery. We obviously under Clemson PSA is one of the 4 branches of that. So it's a natural melding of extension, the research, the plant regulatory group, but particularly extension for us. We also are the extension veterinarians with the extension service. Most every state has extension veterinarians to help people with their problems, help resource veterinarians, which are separate. But in our case, we're in the same agency. We can fill the dual role. Plus, I don't have as many people standing by for emergency disease traces because we can use livestock extension agents as backup if we have to do a lot of extra testing. So the state saves money there. We resource them with their problems, and they're trained to be backups for us. So I don't have to have as big a staff as a lot of states do because we work so well with Extension Service. Extension Service helps in every state. Sure. But in other states, you know, they decide whether they want to help. In South Carolina, we all report now to George Askew, and it may not be an option for them.
Well, that's a good thing for the rest of us. We're very pleased.
Yeah.
And in terms of a partner federal agency, would that be USDA?
Yeah, or? USDA, Animal Plant and Health Inspection Service, that's APHIS, and then the next acronym is VS for Veterinary Services.
Okay.
So there's a chief federal veterinarian in Washington, Dr. John Clifford, and they have offices all across the nation, and we partner. A lot of our work is cooperative, like in the Extension Service, it's a federal-state partnership. A lot of our work, we administer federal programs and use cooperative agreements to do that. So in South Carolina, they have reorganized recently. They used to have what they called an area veterinarian in charge, so we're used to saying the AVIC, who has been Dr. Dolores Leonard for several years, but now they're calling them assistant district directors. I don't know that a lot of them appreciate the acronym of being ADD.
Well, coming from someone like me, I appreciate it. There's hope for all of us.
That's true. That's true. So yeah, we do work very closely with them and rely on them for our international trade, and we handle all the state between state travel and regulations. But when it's export in other countries and a coordinated response, it's a very good partnership. You know, we fuss about each other often, but in reality, we work very well together and rely on one another.
Right, amazing. Now, in terms of the number of veterinarians that are a part of Clemson's program in livestock and poultry health, what is that?
Well, we're organized into 3 divisions, and so the state animal health responsibility that every state does is done in our programs, animal health programs, which is one of my 3 departments that I'm responsible for. Dr. Adam Eichelberger is my director for that. In fact, he's walking around the building here somewhere this afternoon. And that group, he has 3 other veterinarians, so there are 4 veterinarians there. I'm also responsible for the state meat inspection program. Not all states have, about 28 states have state meat inspection programs that are at least equal to the federal. And South Carolina's one of those. We get a 50-50 cost share. We help more with the smaller plants that can't move across state lines. But
Sure.
I have a director that's a veterinarian and an assistant director, and then they have 4 veterinarians in the various regions around the state. So that's 6 veterinarians there. And then I'm also responsible for the state diagnostic laboratory. And we have 4 veterinarians now. There's a director, and we have a veterinary microbiologist, and we have 2 pathologists that work in our diagnostic lab. And then working with me is my epidemiologist, Mike Martin, who resources all 3. So there are 2 of us in administration. So that makes 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 10, 4, 14, 16 veterinarians in livestock poultry health.
You know, and I mean, for someone on the Clemson campus, that may seem like a lot, but when you consider, first of all of the responsibilities of this area, and then also how many people you touch with the work.
All of the livestock poultry in South Carolina, of course, South Carolina Poultry's the big dog on campus.
Right, right.
Big industry, and direct, there are a lot of different figures, and I know they're working on a new economic analysis. An older one showed like 1.6 billion in direct sales and 6.6 billion in total economic impact from poultry,
right,
and animal agriculture being even higher than that. All of the marketing to cross state lines relies on our programs. So we are involved in every bit of that.
Amazing.
In one way or the other, in some ways, multiple ways.
And now that we're seeing a bit more in terms of trying to eat locally and having, when we're talking a lot about small farms around
Yes.
here, what role does Clemson have in those situations?
Well, we, a very heavy one, and we're thrilled to see that. We obviously work very closely with the large farms and
Sure.
have all along, and will continue to do so, and they're vital. But in some ways, we have even more involvement with a lot of the small farms, particularly farm to market, and that's a particular good role for our state meat inspection program. When they want to process and market, they have to, meet the requirements. And if they're selling just in South Carolina, we can refer them to one of our plants that does custom processing. We have to approve all the labels for custom labels, and we work with them. One of the things we're known for in the state meat inspection program, we have to follow all the same rules that the federal program does. But Clemson, as I know you've probably already heard, we believe in regulation through education because we're a university. And so when we say you don't meet the regulation, then we say, so how can you fix it? Let's work together and see if we can solve this problem. Or we get these calls a lot, increasing. I want to get a custom label for my beef. I want to take it to a custom plant and have it labeled what I need to do. And we start with, well, here are the requirements, and we'll be happy to work with you in developing a label that gets it right the first time and gets approved, or say they want to build their own plant. Federal government would show you, here's the CFR, when you finish building, come back, we'll say yes or no. What we would say, bring us your plans. Let's look through this, and as you build, let's do this together so that we're pretty assured that when you're finished, it's going to get approved.
Right, right. Well, that's helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot that gets lost in that process of putting things together if you don't have some guidance along the way.
Right,
So,
and a lot of these small producers haven't had the experience. A lot of people are new, and it's exciting to have new people in the industry. Our diagnostic lab provides services. We encourage them to find a local veterinarian if they can to work through, because that's always better. And as extension veterinarians, we tell the local veterinarian that may not be comfortable working on a cow or backyard chickens, if you're willing to go, you can call us. We will help you serve this client. If they can't find anybody as extension veterinarians, we resource them on their disease problems. Our diagnostic lab will serve them directly. and help them have some management assistance. And we'll coordinate that with the livestock extension areas. Again, one of the advantages of us being together,
Right.
we serve on the extension livestock and forages team. And so from the production end, extension, as you probably have already heard, helps them with their budgets and stuff. From meat inspection to helping them with meeting their requirements to provide a safe, wholesome product to their public. So it's an exciting opportunity. And marketing-wise, certainly we encourage them to work with the Department of Agriculture and their South Carolina grown.
Right.
It's a nice partnership between agencies. We have a significant role, South Carolina Department of Agriculture does, and it's just exciting to everybody to have all these new people
Right.
taking an interest in agriculture and wanting to know about what they eat.
Yeah, and you don't have to explain it as much as,
No.
as to why it's important, the work that is being done, because, I mean, if you don't hear about it, things seem to be okay until there's a breakout of either animal illness or human illness from consumption.
Yeah,
So.
and see, we've got some particular challenges. We always talk biosecurity. We have worked over the years on an umbrella program that the Department of Agriculture participated some in as well, and but it's called South Carolina Ag Watch. And from the animals side, it's kind of stolen from the Neighborhood Watch thing. There are not that many of us, and the way we're able to monitor health of animals in our state and respond is partnering with the people, like in your neighborhood. You're going to be the one that knows what's wrong, and so we have classes and a manual that help educate them on what is that normal that you need to let somebody know about, and what's not, who it is you call when you see something, and just basic general biosecurity steps that you can take that will minimize you being at risk to anybody else's problem. And that program has been very, very successful for us.
You know, this brings to mind a question that's probably way out left field, but taxidermy, is that any connection with, just from the perhaps hazardous waste?
Yes.
I was just curious.
A minor issue, and there's some overlap between, most of it is game,
Right.
and so DNR is regulation, but we have some concerns which they share and monitor for people bringing back big game from other parts of the country that may have diseases we don't.
Yes.
And when it comes to mine is in cervids, deer, elk, from other parts that may have chronic wasting disease, and it can be spread by taxidermy. And so we monitor where it's come from and how they dispose of the waste materials.
Now you mentioned ESF 17. Tell me about that and what role Clemson plays in ensuring that is implemented.
Part of South Carolina's emergency preparedness. You know, post 9/11, everybody firmed up. Emergency response is a big part of what we have always done because we're in disease response and eradicating diseases that are of common concern. In fact, the state veterinarian was created in 1901 to respond to a cattle disease, cattle tick fever, which is now held at bay at the Texas-Mexico border. They have tick riders down there now that are scratching cows looking for infected ticks.
Oh my goodness.
But from the documents I found, that's what gave origin to us. They wanted someone to help control this disease in cattle. So part of that is often an emergency response. Say it was a foreign animal disease such as foot and mouth that hit Great Britain twice during the last decade.
Yes.
So we've had those responses, but there are not enough of us to handle the quarantines and roads. And Hurricane Hugo was a wake-up call for South Carolina back in the late 80s. So South Carolina has a structure patterned on the natural National Incident Management System. And nationally it's 11 that agriculture. In South Carolina, ESF, which is emergency support function.
Okay.
17 is agriculture. And I think because we're in Columbia, Clemson was the logical one. I assume it preceded me joining Clemson, but we're located in Columbia and the EOC is in Columbia, so we became the lead agency, Livestock Poultry Health, to help coordinate all of agriculture. A lot of agencies help, and nonprofits and professional organizations. But Department of Agriculture has a role. Department of Transportation has a role, and so you combine all those. So we anywhere from evacuating pets to hurricanes, which probably gets the most planning and has been activated the most. And we partner with local governments, and animal control, and the South Carolina Association of Veterinarians takes the lead with volunteer veterinarians to help with that.
Okay.
To South Carolina Farm Bureau helps with Department of Agriculture on sheltering for horses that have to be evacuated. And then disease plan for animals is us. Regulatory services at Clemson would handle the plant part. Extension has a role in recovery from disasters and helping people, particularly on food safety. You know, my freezer was out, how long can I go?
Right.
They do crop damage assessments, the extension agents do. So there's a lot of roles for the university that the state, you don't think about until it hits. That when the state says, we need to know this, who do we go to? And the answer is almost always Clemson.
And that's helpful, particularly in these situations. And fortunately or unfortunately, we don't always know that because they happen at those times, and we don't know how many different people that you're involved with and how many different industries that you're involved with.
Dr. Charlotte Krugler is our emergency preparedness veterinarian, and she has the thankless task of reviewing these plans and rewriting them and clearing them with all the agencies and submitting them every year.
And it's nice to know it's being done.
Indeed.
Whether I would have known that or not, we do need to know that. We do need to know where our resources are going, so that when these times do hit, that we're safe and our animals and our pets are safe. So.
And it's who has the statutory authority. When it's an animal disease, state law makes me responsible and gives me certain authorities. When it's a plant disease, Steve Cole is given that authority and responsibility. And so matching up those responsibilities to the willing in the plan is a challenge, but we've partnered real closely with regulatory services over the years in developing that, and we make each other stronger.
And along those lines, though, looking forward out on the horizon, in terms of issues that concern you, that you feel need to be addressed, particularly in terms of livestock and poultry health. One of the things that comes to mind is climate change and concerns about water availability and things such as that.
Yeah, and Clemson is doing some great work with Intelligent River, Intelligent Farm to provide data that you can base good recommendations on those kind of things. One thing that may or may not be, there's certain disease that are vector-borne diseases are changing their pattern of where they are because of change in temperatures. A certain strain of blue tongue virus in sheep and small ruminants and cows in Europe has devastated a lot of the population because it's moved north in areas it never was. Requires a certain gnat that has never lived that far north. Same thing has happened in the Midwestern part of the U.S. They've had outbreaks of epizootic hemorrhagic disease that can affect cattle, but it's primarily sheep and goats. It's rather endemic in the South, and we don't have many outbreaks, but last 2 or 3 years, and they're saying, where did this come from? Well, some of that may be related to climate change. Another immediate concern from the news right now, and particularly we've already talked about the growth in back to farming, small groups.
Yes.
A lot of that's backyard. They want free range poultry and turkey, and I respect that, but there's certain inherent risk. Like commercial turkey production was not moved inside to be large agriculture. It was moved inside for the health of the turkeys because they're so susceptible to diseases like avian influenza that can be carried by migratory waterfowl in the Midwest. So I don't know, I noticed, you may not have, in December in the state of Washington, we had our first isolation of the Asian strain of high path avian influenza. It was a H5N8 and an H5N2, two different strains. They had it in a province in Canada in commercial, not in our commercial birds, but was in some raptors that were being fed wild birds.
Right.
Then it was in a wild duck, and then it was in Oregon, and now it's in two backyard flocks that shared a pond with the flyover. So the high path AIs of the past had never survived the flight over the ocean. This strain has adapted and survived the flight, and it's in the Pacific Flyway. And just today I read of they're doing extra surveillance, and we found it in wild ducks in Utah.
Oh my.
So
yeah,
I think we now have that. And the recommendation in California, the only one they have for your backyard poultry, to take them inside, protect them from the wild birds, because this disease is carried by ducks. Doesn't make them sick. They're just typhoid mares, and it'll kill maybe half a flock. One place had 100 turkeys, and the call was 50 of our turkeys just died.
Yeah.
So we've got an opportunity. The Pacific Flyway and the Atlantic don't cross over, but we're on
We need
height.
to learn.
And we need to start educating people that, not that you can't have them outside, but don't include a pond with wild birds to where they mix.
Yeah.
Or maybe put a wire over the top of where you have them where those wild birds can't join them. So there's some new challenges.
Yes, there definitely are, and that brings me to the question of the connection between research at Clemson that's going on a daily basis and the work of your office. I assume that is connected. I mean, that is part of it.
Yeah, you probably already talked to some folks about the perfect model of extension helps find the needs, takes it back to the experiment station and the research, and then the research comes out and extension takes it back out to the farmers. And in South Carolina, Clemson is uniquely able to add in a regulatory feed in. Not that there aren't relationships in other states, but ours is by nature of our organization integrated. We have some research done in our diagnostic laboratory that's funded by the experiment station, so there are researchers there, and we can help bring that research, the need. In fact, we're coordinating a survey now where we've seen some reports through our diagnostic lab of some concerns on some increased calf death, born dead in beef cow.
Okay.
And so we've organized with the extension a survey to assess whether we can, if it's just an individual instance or there's an increase. And so I think we add to the existing land grant mission, that can surface what the problems have, get it to the right people and get the answers, and then take it back out.
That's wonderful, and it's so good to know.
Oh,
and
yeah.
who would have known? I mean, I know you would have, but the rest of us, who would have known
Well, and I
there
don't
was that much going on?
Yeah, I don't want to steal Tom Dobbins's thunder, just coming off the centennial year of Smith Lever, but
right.
It was a Clemson model that the whole nation has. The
Yes.
land grant system and the Smith Lever Act, Representative Lever, who was from South Carolina, a Clemson trustee, who authored the act and started the extension service. And it's that loop that has worked so well. I recently saw a article from a veterinarian that has done a lot of work in China. It's a dairy veterinarian, happened to be a friend of mine. I serve on some AVMA committees with him. And he said if you could say one big difference, what would make the biggest difference for livestock in China, in the dairy, he says all of their agriculture, having been over there, they've got a lot of the same things we do. They've got the same desire. He said what they don't have is the extension service and the experiment station to help bring the knowledge to the people who can use it.
Right.
And he says it's a stark contrast. That was, if he could name one thing, the difference between U.S. agriculture and Chinese, he said that was it.
That is amazing. Well, it should make you feel good in the work that you do, and it makes the rest of us feel a lot safer, and it makes us feel better about how we treat our animals in all aspects of their journeys.
Well,
So,
good. Yes. Yeah, it's a continuum. We all have our roles to play.
That's right. Well, I want to thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
I've been speaking with Dr. Boyd Parr. He is the director of Clemson University Livestock Poultry Health and also the state veterinarian for South Carolina.